What?
Welcome, welcome. Now we're live.
What?
Welcome, everybody, to Stealth Hill Productions. We're doing another episode of Terra Talks as we are figuring out how to make this game beautiful.
Mhm.
Uh, I am Rulebook Rodriguez. I am I suppose, the developer and creator of the game. And uh, today's assistant is the magnanimous. I can't say that word. David, please.
Hi guys, my name is David. I am the magnanimous
Yep.
second here. I've been playing Terra Magia for a couple of years now, I would say. Right,
Yeah.
going through different
Without a doubt, the
iterations.
most veteran.
Yeah, yeah, a veteran Terra Magia player. So yeah, that's me. I do a lot of TTRPG stuff here on Stealthy Elf. Playing a lot of Pathfinder Second Edition and any of those campaigns, and then occasionally I show up over on Tales Archived. So go check everything out. That's me.
Oh yeah. So today we're basically just talking about two primary things and two primary mechanics: resting and crafting. Um, it should be a kind of a shorter, one of these, uh, but it can get a little complicated, especially the crafting. But so for that reason, let's get started with the resting. So any good tabletop RPG, I think a big part of it is resource management. And while we can, uh, make that anything really, anything can be a resource. I feel like no matter what character you play, no matter what type of archetype you build or what have you, the primary resources that everyone manages is their health, uh, and their magic and their VP, which I'll explain in a moment here. And rest is kind of the key method by which that is uh, managed. So
Mhm.
the way that I set up health, vitality, and mana in this is that uh, health is the most uh, difficult to acquire and the one that you should, protect the most, essentially. Uh, VP is a little more free floating than that. Uh, you're more free to take some hits if you have a decent pool of VP. So it's your buffer before your health, and then your mana in like most games. Which, if anyone looks up the history of the word mana, it's very interesting, but doesn't matter here. Uh,
Well, now I gotta.
it's mostly convoluted nonsense, and some people are like the Bible, and then other people go, "Nope, it's fun." Anyways, uh, the idea with MP of mana is just here's a pool of points, you cast your spells from it, and it is uh easy enough to gain back in during a rest. But it's less so than VP. VP is really the one that can sway back and forth a lot. It's the pool by which you would survive. Typically, would one would a character would survive most of the like an ongoing dungeon where you don't get a whole lot of time to like actually sit down and sleep or whatever else. That's the thing that's going to get you through.
Got it.
So
So
another
your P's are precious.
my P's are precious.
Like HP, your
Yes.
VP, and your MP.
Yeah, you're right. The P's are precious.
Precious P's.
Uh, if I keep saying P, I'm gonna have to put one of those poppers in front of me. So
Yeah.
one of the reasons, for one of the aspects of arrest in a lot of games, I suppose, and one that I wanted to kind of pull in is, uh, you know, emphasizing to the player to try to get a rest in there somehow. So
Mhm.
along with it being a way to refill your stock of these basic pools, I wanted there to be a penalty for not resting. Otherwise, players will just go until they can't, and that's fair. Don't get me wrong, but a few times I've run into as a player myself where we are drained. We have no rest. We have not rested in I would say a few days. Uh, David, I'm pretty sure you recall just recently
Mhm.
we were
Hey,
playing a
wrestling
few games.
mattered.
Wrestling really mattered. Uh, and I think that intensity of, oh, we need to go to sleep, guys. This team needs to, hunker down is not only good for that intensity of gameplay where it's like, oh, this is a necessity, but also I found in my games, in my play, that rest time is when most of the players get to decompress and really
Mhm.
role play and break things down, and to have something that pushes that
Mhm.
mechanically, I think is a good idea, which is why I am forced this penalty where uh
The five. So, oh no, you're getting a little.
I'm getting what?
Yeah, no, your connection's stabling out. It's a little choppy.
Oh
Looks a
no.
little. Yeah, it's okay. I think you're good now. Yeah,
Okay.
I can see you
Uh
dancing.
got it. So uh
Yeah, so I got it here. It looks like characters must sleep once per day, or else they are afflicted by a 5 severity of exhaustion. Oof.
yes. So exhaustion essentially reduces uh how many actions you get per round. So if you sleep, just your total actions per if you don't sleep, your total actions go down for the day. And one of the primary ways to get rid of exhaustion is resting.
Yeah,
So
that makes
it's
sense.
not like
That makes sense.
yeah, so it's not like you can just get rid of it through magical means. I mean, you'd be able to, but you'd also be running out of your mana at
I mean,
that
your
point.
mana. It's
Exactly.
valuable P. Yeah.
Exactly. So
You don't
it
want to spend one P for another P.
exactly. So it's I made it kind of cyclical where you can kind of artificially, extend that time period, but it is on a timer.
Mhm.
Um, and it makes it so that with the exhaustion being the primary hindrance once you don't sleep, uh, it causes you to just be less effective in battle no matter what your class is because every archetype needs the all of the action economy
Yeah.
it can muster.
Yeah. Action economy is very important. I really like the idea of exhaustion affecting your action economy. That makes sense. That's a really smart way to do it. And I think that because it's such, like you said, it's so important. And I think anybody who's ever played a TTRPG, especially like with turn-based stuff, yeah, you don't want to lose out on action economy.
Right. I mean, I've dealt with that recently, and with all the afflictions I had in one of our games, I was
Mm,
just like, I felt like I was stuck.
mm,
uh, so yeah, I feel like that's a good penalty. It doesn't stop you from playing, but it also strongly enforces you to take a rest.
correct. Yeah, I think that's a solid penalty. So just want to quick clarify the number 5 severity, right? So we
Yeah.
should just clarify too, in terms of action economy, you have your 3 major actions,
Yep.
2 minor actions,
Just one minor action.
minor action. So that's 4, right? So that
Yeah.
fifth one, what does the fifth severity look like?
So
Is that that?
the severity of an ailment is a separate tracker.
Okay.
Um, it's not saying that each point of each severity reduces uh, the action totally. Essentially, each ailment, which was what exhaustion is, has 3 tiers. Up to each tier has 5 severities slots, essentially.
Sure, sure.
So,
Oh yeah, that's right. Pull up my character
uh,
sheet.
at a uh, minor severity, which is
Mhm.
1 through 5, you only lose one action. Um,
Yeah,
at
I see.
a 6 through 10, you lose 2 actions, and 10 up, you lose 3.
Got it.
And at that point, you're done. You're stuck doing just minor actions, which are almost entirely mental actions. If you have
Yeah.
to roll for a mental stat or skill,
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Yar. Yeah. That's
So you,
that's that's still pretty good. So you won't be like, so let's say, you were totally exhausted. So 3 days of not sleeping would basically get you to no major actions if you were silly enough to do that.
yeah, which would mean you just stand there and think, "This
Hmm.
sucks."
Hmm. Fall asleep standing.
Exactly.
All right, cool. I'm with you.
Um, so now let's break down the rest. So I went the same path as Paizo and which is the coast, and honestly, pretty much every other table of RPG you
Yeah,
can think of, splitting it up between something you can do quickly and something that requires the full night to heal, essentially.
yeah. Hmm.
I went with quick rest to full rest. Terminology, whatever.
That's good. Gets
In
the point
terms of,
across.
huh?
Gets the point across.
Exactly. In terms of like numbers, I for quick rest I put 30 minutes, and the fun fact about why I pick 30 minutes, it's the amount of time between uh once I do an exercise that leaves me dead, that I feel like after 30 minutes I could probably do it again. So I was like, yeah, that
Sure.
makes sense.
Based on real life. I also will say too, 30 minutes is a nice number because I mean, we already mentioned, Paizo and Wizards of the Coast, right? In D&D, it's an hour for a short rest. In 2E, you can like do a refocus thing in like 10 minutes, right? So it's right in the middle, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I totally intentional. Uh,
But it's also, like you said, realistically accurate, which is kind of nice, right? It feels like a good amount of time.
mhm. Thank you. So here's the thing that I really wanted your input on is the
Mhm,
percentages is the amount of healing that comes through. I set
mhm,
it up as percentages so
mhm.
that uh, no matter what amount you have, you can just half and a quarter. And I feel like that's easy enough math, but I'm also a nerd, so like maybe it's not
Sure.
for everyone, whatever. Um, But the biggest thing is also that a quick rest does not heal your wounds. It does not heal
Mhm.
your HP.
Yep.
Uh, Instead, a quick rest only heals half of your total MP and a quarter of your total MP.
Half of your total VP, quarter of your total MP. I think you said MP twice.
You're probably right. Quick rest heals half of your total VP and a
Mhm.
quarter of your total MP.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, because VP, I'll say that's 30 minutes. Okay. I think the numbers, I don't think the numbers are hard for people to kind of get the math around, right? I think being able to identify what half of a number is pretty easy. And then half of a number
Yeah,
should be just as easy.
exactly.
But like, yeah, I don't think that's too tricky. Um, I do have a question though.
Got it.
Can you stack quick rests? Like, can I say, like, if I were to rest an hour, would that count as two quick rests? And then I get
Mm,
100% of my VP back, 50% of MP.
no.
Okay.
I feel like no, because for a full rest, uh, you only get for full rest you get back 100% of your VP, and
Hmm.
that's 8 hours.
Hmm.
So I feel like you can't just stack your quick rests. I feel like there has to be a period of time in between.
Sure.
Um,
And you could put a limit on it too. I know, like, for example, I'm pretty sure D&D has like a 2 short rest limit per day.
yeah, that
So
makes sense.
yeah, so like you can't, just keep short resting all day, after each fight, right? You got to kind of space those out. And the other thing too, I mean, we've played enough D&D. I think the last time I played D&D, well, actually no, but we played D&D together at the same table, and I remember very clearly because D&D you recover with your hit dice. I remember rolling snake eyes on my hit dice for rests, and you're like, oh great, I get
I,
3 HP.
I did not sleep actually.
Yeah.
Uh, wow, they put insomnia into the game. Got it.
Hmm. I also like to, just before we get too far into it, I also like the quick note here about quick rest being allowed. You can keep armor on. That's good.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like it makes sense for if you're going to go to sleep, you can take your armor off. But like if you're just taking a
Taking a
sit,
breather.
yeah.
Yeah. Grabbing a drink of
Uh,
water. Yeah.
so
Sure.
how many rests per how many
Per day.
quick rests per long rest for full rest do you think is reasonable?
Personally, I think 3 would be where I would go.
Okay. I do love the number 3. I think it's a magical number. So
Same. Yeah, 3 is probably where I'd go. It feels intuitive. And then you can also kind of break it down into like the periods of the day, right? Typically we have, morning, midday, evening kind of thing, right? Morning, afternoon, night, if you want to get, you know, nitty gritty about it. But you can break a day down into 3 easily, right? Um, and again, yeah, as for the numbers, then you would be assuming. So this might also be something to consider too. We get real technical, gamey stuff here, but what would your like? I think they call it like an encounter budget be for the day, right? Like how many encounters would you realistically throw at a party of players in a day? And I understand some of that might be dependent based on the challenge of the individual encounters, but generally speaking, would you be looking at like 3 encounters a day if you're doing 3 rests?
I think
4
somewhere.
encounters, 5,
I
yeah,
th-
somewhere there.
I think my goal when we get to the monsters and like balancing that stuff
Mhm.
is I want an encounter to feel like most of the time, unless things
Mhm.
go really wrong, the party will lose their most of their VP, if not all of it, and maybe a little bit of
Mhm.
their HP, maybe a
Okay.
quarter max. So like they could handle if they take a rest, maybe 3 fights. Uh, each time getting
Got it.
their HP slowly closer and closer to 0 each time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, keep in mind too, right? You'd end up in a situation too where the first encounter, let's say the first encounter takes down, and I know we're going to get to monsters and stuff later, right? But let's just say first encounter takes on all the VP, a little bit of the HP, right? You rest. You don't get any HP back, but you get 50% of your VP back. Next encounter, if you have the same system, you're that's 50% of the VP, so that's gone, right? That other 50% of VP, now that damage is going to have to be mitigated by HP,
Yep.
right? Which was already taking like a little bit of a bump, right? So now you got a character who's probably in pretty dire straits by the time you're looking to take that second quick rest,
Yeah.
right? Because when you get that back, yeah, you'll get back your VP, but you're probably sitting on like, I don't know, somewhere between like 40 to 60% of your HP lost.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. So it seems like for a that way we could almost balance dungeons based on like encounter rate, where easy dungeons would be like 2 encounters per long rest, and hard dungeons would be 3.
Hmm. Hmm. And I mean, ultimately, too, there's still going to be other mitigating factors, right? Like there's strategic stuff. You will have ace, your AR, your armor rating, to mitigate, incoming hits. You play smart, around each other, that kind of stuff. I think it's doable with this system, but I do think by encounter 3, you're going to be looking for that rest. You're going to be
Yeah.
looking for a place to take that long rest
So I was
or full
thinking.
rest.
So I added in that you can only take 3 quick rests per full rest, rather than saying any 24-hour period or anything like that, because
Sure.
whatever. Um,
Or 3 quick rests between full rests.
yes. Uh, and I was gonna add, and there has to be like a period of time between quick rests, so you can't just back to back. But I'm
Hmm.
wondering if maybe leave that out. Leave that out, because eventually they will just run out of quick rests that they can do. So if, like, for example, they took 1 rest and they they took all of the damage and they got hurt, and now they're coming up against like what they perceive to be the end of this floor of the dungeon. They know it's going to be a
Hmm.
hard fight, so they take just back to back quick rests to get their VP all the way up and
Hmm.
get a
For
little
an
extra
hour.
MP. Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, that would be a strategic use of the system. That would be something where they're choosing to take a little bit more time, and they can't do
Mhm.
it very often. And I don't know. I feel like I'm thinking I might be comfortable with that. What do you think? Do you think that's too easy to abuse, or is that just not that big a
No,
deal?
not necessarily. I think because the numbers are pretty, because we have like hard numbers, right?
Mhm.
50%, 25%, 30 minutes. You know, these are, there's not, there's no ambiguity there. There's
Mhm.
also no like luck factor. And the other thing too is you'll have different builds that'll, you know, be able to kind of accommodate for this kind of stuff. So I think that's fair. And you want to give players the ability to like, I don't know, gamify things a little bit. I mean, it is a game, right?
Right.
So, you know, you want to be able to let players have like something that maybe feels like an exploit, even though it's part of the design, right? Like I think I can't come up with a great example right now, but uh, finding ways to finding ways to use the system to your advantage is something I think players should be allowed to do.
Agreed. Okay. Um,
Yeah, I think the numbers are solid.
I feel pretty comfortable with a quick rest then. Uh,
Mhm.
let's move on to like a full rest and have a little chat about this. So, full rest, the differences here is mostly just the length of time. A full rest is a 8 hour period. During that time, the character needs to spend at least 6 of those hours sleeping, unconscious, whatever. And 2 of the hours doing light work. By that I mean, campfire stuff.
Sure,
So,
sure. Yeah,
you know,
cleaning armor, sharpening swords,
keeping watch, whatever.
keeping
Um,
watch.
I would also prioritize as this rest time as crafting time. So opening up your bag and doing the maintenance.
But that would be within the 2 hours. It's not sleeping, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Uh, that feels okay. That feels okay. I'm interested. I will say I still need to see what the crafting stuff looks like, but again, it makes sense.
mhm.
It
I'll be
makes
honest.
sense.
So I also need to see what the crafting stuff looks like. I feel like I wrote it down one time and then moved on.
Yeah, that's fair. Crafting is one of those things where it's like everybody loves it, but it's really hard to get right.
Yep.
You know, it's really hard. Like I remember, I mean, a lot of my gaming history is in games like D&D, but I remember D&D's crafting mechanics before Xanathar's 5th edition was brutal. Like, crafting projects would take months. There's no way a character was actually going to be able to complete an item if you were following, you know, rules as written
Right.
in their
Jeez.
adventuring career, right? Like, it was rough. Um, then Xanatar's kind of came out and cleaned it up with some optional rules. Um, 2E does a pretty nice system with the 8 hour workday, right? Like crafting has to be like true crafting is essentially a downtime activity, but they treat that as again like an entire day's worth of stuff, and you can make progress here and there like piecemeal, um, but you still it still ends up being an amount of time invested, right? So like you could like if you were kind of I'm just thinking if like if you wanted to kind of like graft a 2E crafting system onto this, that 2 hours would be like 2 hours of a work day, right? 2 hours of progress on a project um, that you can pick up and continue later on if the conditions or other stuff were right. But yeah.
Makes sense. So for the full rest, the percentages break down to you get back your full VP every time.
Mhm.
You get back half of your MP
Mhm.
and a quarter of your HP. So your HP does not really recover very much.
No.
HP is hard to get back. It's the main way to get HP back, as we'll talk about later on, is medicine.
Mhm.
Uh, Medical application, magical or otherwise,
Yep. Seems
is kind of
intuitive. I like it.
yeah. That way, I think also keeps people from just like you know going crazy. Just like,
Yeah.
all right, had a fight, gotta take a sleep.
Yeah. VP becomes, and it also does kind of, I think, highlight something that's pretty unique to Terra, which is that VP as your almost like buffer kind of stuff. It's almost like your your hero aura, right?
Hmm.
Your heroic spirit. Um, it is a nice way. So you can still stay active, you can still do stuff. You don't have to worry. But then it does make medicine relevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I also added a note at the end regarding armor.
Hmm.
Essentially, the players have to either have armor that says you can sleep in it, otherwise you can't. And if you try to, you have to do a hard willpower roll, basically to overcome the discomfort of it. Uh, which may be easier, when you're a higher level adventure, like this is something you become accustomed to, so it's you get over it, uh, as displayed by your points in willpower. But yeah, I felt like that was a easy way to balance that out. I might make it an extreme willpower check just because, you know, just to enforce that a little more even.
Where's the willpower on this sheet for me?
Willpower is under influence.
Oh, hang on. I think I gotta update my sheet. I have under influence, intimidate, negotiate, mental fort.
Oh, oh my god. I haven't updated this in years.
Oh no.
You're right, Metal Fortune.
Oh, mental fort. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Or I mean, I could also see it as an endurance too, right? Like a hard stamina check would also be a thing.
Yeah. Um,
I mean, but I think we'll have to break down the individual skills and their like
I think
components.
I think I might for now make it endurance.
Sure.
Uh, because that's just a stat. So leaving it as
Yeah.
hard, it means that you can't add your dice, your skill dice
Yeah,
to it.
your advantage. I see. Yeah. That's good shit. That's good.
All
Yeah,
right.
because that 20, and like you said too, because a hard check is a 20, right?
Mhm.
So I'm thinking about Jin, right? Jin has excuse me, an 8 in endurance, so that means I would need to get at least a 12 on the dice. So
And he's
I
good
need,
at it.
yeah, and he's good at it. But yeah, and I think we talked about the progression last time, so it'd be a while before Jin was making that check, quote unquote, in his sleep, right? He could have did
Right.
that. But yeah, yeah.
Uh, the last aspect of that is that if the character does rest in their armor, they will
Mhm.
still get some benefit. They'll get a quick rest essentially because they're still sitting down for an hour.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah.
Uh, all right.
The other thing too that's worth, I mean, I will get into this when we start doing like the ancestries and stuff like that, right? But humans are great when it comes to resting. That ability to was it power nap, where
Yeah.
you take a quick rest. You can treat a quick rest as a full rest. That's come in handy already a couple times, right? It does make humans uh pretty resilient.
Hmm. Which
Hmm.
was always the goal, and like you said, we'll break it down more when you get to the ancestries.
Yeah.
Um, but I wanted humans to be the most resilient, the most cockroachy, hard to kill. You know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
all right, now let's get down to the crafting.
Crafting. Odds
All
and
right.
quacks.
Arts and crafts. Oh my god.
Oh my
So,
god, we're crafting.
uh,
America spells cheese.
America spells cheese. I don't even know what that means.
K-R-A-F-T. K-R-A-F-T, man. Come on.
Okay, so da, 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 da.
All right. Threshold and time, material. These are some good. Yeah. Both really important things to consider when you're crafting. Just
Yep,
looking at like
that's
headings.
uh yeah, I'm hoping. I'm honestly currently rereading my own my own rules because I have not once implemented really crafting. I'm doing it right now with the current campaign we're running
Mhm.
with Arden, but I
Yeah.
have not
Arden's
yet.
doing a lot of crafting.
Yeah.
We'll read them out loud. Or I can read them out loud if you want.
I can do the first one at least. When crafting, you can either create something from scratch or modify an existing item with no mods. To craft or mod an item, you need to have a blueprint for that item slash mod. Blueprints can be bought from for a quarter the price of the original item, or they can be made by rolling average. No, let's bump that up. Hard.
Yeah, I think leave it as hard, and then you can have like certain classes or archetypes can bring it down to average. That would make sense.
Yeah. Hard logic or intuition checks. Uh, I left intuition in there just because I like the idea of someone just being like
It's
someone who's a
themes, right?
woodworker. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Someone's like a woodworker's like they're crafting this thing out of art. It's not a whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, it's an artistic sort of thing, and
yeah,
also too, it's nice, similar to what we were talking about with the resting. It is a um, stat modifier and not like one of the ability things, right?
exactly. All right, check on a item that you have access to for at least one quick rest. So you have to spend at least 30
Very
minutes
nice.
with an item without having a fight going on to be able to look at it and really you know figure it out. Uh, the other requirement for crafting is to have materials equal to half the cost of the item. Might change that because then half and half it just makes the full item and you might as well just buy it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Could be you could be quarter or
Yeah,
yeah,
quarter.
yeah.
Quarter the cost of the item, and or mod. Uh, Once you have the material and a blueprint, you can roll uh, a logic or intuition check to perform the crafting.
Okay.
Um,
So let's break this down mechanically. For crafting, you need essentially three things: material,
mhm,
blueprint, and
mhm.
time.
Yep.
Right? That
Yeah.
tracks. That makes sense.
And most of the time, you'll have one to maximum two rolls, really.
Mhm.
Depending on the time, I guess. With one being to try to figure out the item if you don't have a blueprint to try to get it, and the
Mhm.
other one to actually do the labor.
Mhm.
All right. Um, I'm trying to think of
Threshold.
yeah. So, threshold and time. Do you mind reading this one? I'm getting the
Yeah.
burps again. Why do I this happen every time?
Threshold and time. The threshold for crafting is dependent on the level of the item. Level 1 items have an average threshold. Level 2 items have a hard threshold. Level 3 items have an extreme threshold. Failing the roll causes a loss of half of the materials used. All items start by taking 5 days to complete. When you roll a crafting check, each degree of success reduces the crafting down by 1 day, down to a minimum of one quick rest. Okay. Okay. Hmm. When you roll a crafting check, each degree of success reduces the crafting down by 1 day, down to a minimum of one quick rest. So, yeah, it's a degree of success. Okay. So yeah, if you roll like absolute fire, right, on
You can
your
get it in
crafting
quick.
check, yeah, you can get it in. So yeah, let's take an example of crafting an average level 1 item. Average threshold is a
Standard threshold.
10. It's a standard threshold, right?
I
It's
changed it.
10. That's right.
Yep.
No, that's easy. 15.
15.
15. Okay. So we have 15 is what we need to beat for a level 1 item. All
Yep.
right. Remind me, degrees of success is
Every singular number above the target, above the threshold.
okay. So if you rolled so it starts off as 20, or sorry, it start yeah.
15.
If you roll it, yeah, it starts off at 15. If you rolled a 20, it starts off at 5 days. If you rolled a 20, that's 5 degrees of success. So you would reduce that down by 1 day, down to a minimum of one quick rest. Okay.
Yeah. So
Um. mhm.
So the part of the reasoning that I put together for this, and now that it's coming back to me, is I want crafting to be something that can be done, on the fly, but I don't want
Mhm.
it to feel like it's easy either. Like I
Mhm.
want a character who is made for crafting, and I have a few archetypes that
Mhm.
have boons to crafting, uh, but very few, which is why I was keeping it as like directly to the stat. So like assuming someone has even like a 10 in their stat, like they are really just brainy.
Yeah, this is their thing.
Like they have to roll a 10 at least. They have to
Mhm.
roll absolutely average, and then they'll be able to make most of their things uh, as a quick rest. But that's only level 1 items. The second
Mhm.
it becomes, the good stuff,
The good stuff, yeah.
they're gonna need to start rolling higher and higher. And at that point, it would require for someone to be crafting the higher level things, the extreme threshold things. They're not gonna just need to be smart. They're gonna need to roll at least like a 15, and at that point, percentages and whatnot, you're gonna need to have a character that's specialized for that. So there are gonna be archetypes and perks to support it.
Sure. So this is, I think it's intuitive. The tricky part that I've got here is when it comes to the individual items, right? We're going to need to see, like, I think each item is essentially going to need to have almost like its own stat block where it's going to have its level. And then in addition to level, is there like a rarity factor as well, right? Or is rarity built
Um,
into the level?
I was thinking rarity would be built into the level. Like,
Okay. Like a
yeah,
legendary item, let's say, like a legendary item, would that be a level 3 item?
I think so. Or perhaps like, maybe I make an alteration here where, uh, beyond level 3, legendary level items, they are unique. Maybe they have their
Sure.
own like,
Yeah, they have
uh,
their own. They're a cut above. Okay. All right, that makes sense. Yeah, they're
but like
unique.
a rocket launcher as a weapon. A rocket launcher is like a level 3 weapon. It does
Sure.
crazy damage. It's hard to make. It's all that stuff. So like, it would it would be that higher tier of weaponry
Mhm.
of
Yeah,
item.
yeah, yeah. An extreme threshold is a 25, I believe.
Yes.
So you would need to hit at least a 30. Just thinking, but it's based on the main stat. It's not going to get any sort of advantage dice and stuff like that. Class
Mhm.
depending. I can
Yeah.
imagine like a gunsmith class that might say like, oh, you get to add an advantage dice if the thing you're making is a firearm of some sort, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that way it'll still make sense, I think, in that way where it's like over a couple of days, this incredibly skilled craftsman was able to, with a little bit of magic and a little bit of crazy bullshit, put together
Mhm.
a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
Versus, the absolutely cracked artificer who's just like, all right, here's some magic, everything's floating around, and whoop, there's a there's a gun.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say I can see. I'm a little bit worried about power creep, but that's also because I'm coming from a game like primarily a game like 2E, which is very power creep like scared. Um, you know, so it kind of we've talked about this before, right? It kind of depends on the kind of game you're going for. Like if you want to have characters who are running around with rocket launchers and stuff like that, this
Mhm.
works, right?
Yeah,
But part of
that's
me
fair.
does feel like you could end up with a little bit of a situation where you have somebody who's a human, right? Who can turn a quick rest into a full rest, let's say, right? So now they are, they that same quick rest time that they could be crafting, they're still actually going to get a lot of resources back. Plus, if they were the right class, they're just going to load up their whole team with rocket launchers.
That's true. Um, hmm,
I mean, and but that's fine. Like if you're, I think if your game is designed where that's the kind of stuff you want to see, this works great, right? It reminds me of the thing I like about this first that I'll before we get into like the nitty gritty is I do like the system. I think this is intuitive. I think it makes sense, right? But I am worried that crafting might be very powerful.
Mhm. I'm wondering if I'm trying to figure out if the limitations that are present currently balance that out a little bit. Where are they going to always have enough materials to do all of that? Will that
Yeah,
be a limiting enough factor to actually,
yeah,
do the thing? Um,
yeah. Materials are going to be a big one.
yeah, which
Yeah,
yeah. So
maybe let's go through materials and then we can kind of circle back to this and then we'll be able to have a better idea of what does this actually look like in practice, right?
mhm. And God, what did I say for materials? This is going to be a learning experience for all of us. Uh, materials.
Ooh, quality.
Why did I do that?
I'm
Uh,
speed reading. I'm jumping ahead. Go ahead.
Materials are categorized as poor, average, or premium quality. When crafting an item, the level of quality of the material determines whether you have advantage or disadvantage to the crafting roll. Poor materials have disadvantage to crafting rolls. Average materials have no advantage, and premium materials give an advantage to the crafting roll. Okay. Um,
Wow.
oh,
So there's an advantage dice,
there
right?
is a
So that's
possible advantage there.
all right. So there's a floating one minimum, four maximum, right? And in terms of a degree of success, those can be critical.
Mhm. Uh, Only average materials can be bought from from the shop, uh, but
Only average
all
materials
can be found in game or salvaged from other items. To salvage material, you have to roll a logic or intuition check to get the materials. A roll that overcomes an easy threshold receives poor quality material equal to half, becoming an
No, you're frozen.
average.
And,
Oh, I'm frozen. You're
no,
frozen
you're
to
good.
me.
You're good. Okay.
um, all right. So, overcoming an easy threshold, you receive poor quality material equal to half the price of the salvaged item. Overcoming an average threshold gives you overcoming standard. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll adjust that. But
Standard threshold gives average quality material, and a hard threshold gives premium quality material. Uh,
mhm.
Overcoming an extreme threshold. Uh, hmm,
Okay.
Overcoming an extreme threshold will give premium material equal to the full cost of the item being salvaged.
Okay.
Okay.
One thing I will maybe just kind of mention is I personally have a little bit of an issue with the term only average materials can be bought from the shop. I would say just because that sounds when you have the word only in there, it sounds very limiting right out of the gate. So I
Mhm.
would maybe say like generally average materials can be bought from the shop because I you don't want to have a situation where like this crazy high level shopkeeper, right, who is like a curios collector of rare items and stuff goes, well, I've only got average materials. you know uh you'd want to leave a little bit of personally. I'm a word nerd. As well, you're a math nerd, I'm a word nerd. I would say I might adjust the word only out of there, but that's just me.
How about typically shops carry average materials?
Perfect.
Uh, which can,
Because that still leaves enough room, like, because again, if I'm playing a character who's doing crafting and I see the word only average materials, I'm thinking like, well, I mean, don't get me wrong, average materials are great, but you can only get them from shops. And then if you come around into like a storekeeper later on that says, well, I've got a legendary item, then you have the rules lawyer person goes, I thought only average materials.
fair, you got me.
But that's
But no,
just, yeah, that's
no, I
just my
think
word
that's
nerd.
I do think that's a good adjustment there. Um, uh,
And
Honestly,
again, I like logic intuition coming up again. Sorry.
I think with what I have going on here, um, the fact that it does add a good amount of uh like with this alone, you already have a way to add some advantage to the crafting itself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, which makes me think, perhaps I add one more level of item to go, extreme plus
Sure.
to the 30s or whatever.
Plus,
So exactly, because like you said, at that point, go into a nice dungeon, get some, you're real smart, so you get the best of materials out of whatever things you find. You start crafting laser shotguns and grenade launchers for everybody. It might get a little iffy.
Laser shotguns. Whoa. It's got a laser spread. That's sick.
Real Jack and Daxter
Oh,
style.
my lucky rock. I have a
uh,
rock that I fiddle with when we game. um, another thing I'll say here too is salvaging materials. Is this something that you expect players to be able to kind of just do at any time, or is this also going to be part of the crafting that, like, let's say it would take place in a quick rest versus like, or within the 2 hours that you would see in a full rest? Like salvage materials, I imagine salvaging stuff would take time as well. So that could also be another somewhat limiting scaling factor to consider. It's like, okay, you crafting oriented player want to do this thing where you want to craft these items. And yeah, you can do so, but you still need to retrieve the items first. You need to secure the items first, right? And I definitely, I mean, I'm fine if, there's certainly like, oh, we find a monster, we beat it up, and we harvest materials from the monster. Oh, we go into a dungeon and we mine out, the ore or stone or whatever, right? But that stuff takes time, right? Do you want those things kind of built into the encounter, or do you want that stuff? Would you think that should also be built into those quick rests times and that 2 hours of the full rest?
mhm.
Because I'm just saying, and that could also be a limiting factor in terms of like, you know,
I
in one
think
quick rest.
I think you're right. I think one, it definitely is. It definitely should be some part of the downtime process, and I'm thinking that. So I'm trying to see multiple options here, but the way I'm thinking about it right now is salvaging is like a short rest, a quick rest, because then the idea here is that it cultivates a certain kind of gameplay loop where you have big fight and then the loot player goes, hey, instead of just grabbing the loot, do you mind if we sit here, harvest everything, and then we move on to the next thing? And that could be part of that loop system where if they're in a big hurry, they'll just grab the stuff and do it next time they sit down. But that way they
Yeah,
can't just, you know.
yeah, and but you could also put even like another limit on a thing where it's like, if you quickly harvest something, the quality of the material is also dependent on how much time you invest into the harvesting, right? If a character says, "Oh, I'm going to, I really, really need to get this specific, I don't know, piece of wood, right? Or this specific quality of wood, right?" If they were to just take an axe to the tree or something, well, it actually harms the materials in a way. Um, you could put a degree of success on there too, which I think that might actually be on there already. Hang on. I think there's the stuff about the material. There's like the
Uh,
different.
so there is not really degrees of success for this. It's basically if you just hit that threshold, the multiple thresholds, depends
Mhm.
on which thing you get. Um, okay,
I mean, we could
so
get real nitty gritty, and that's the thing though. Like, we again kind of keeping in mind the ethos of the game, like how nitty gritty do we really want to get on it?
Yeah,
Right? Do we
like I
want to
do
kind of
like.
keep it simple enough? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go with what you like. That's the most important thing, right? Ultimately, as long as you're playing a game that you yourself want to play, that's the important part.
That's fair. Although I'm gonna be honest, you know who I'm making this for? This is specifically for Nigel. Uh, uh,
There's
okay.
Christmas for you. Well, yeah, because yeah, when we finally do a Sansi Terra, Luna's gonna be all over this shit.
Right?
But
Okay.
the last thing I want as a GM is the Sansi crew all running around with rocket launchers.
That would be so funny though. Okay, so how about uh scavenging takes time, at least a quick rest in order to salvage materials.
Mhm.
Uh, quick salvage can uh, be attempted, but you have disadvantage.
Okay.
Maybe two disadvantage dice because it's very different doing something right now versus a 30-minute period.
You could scale it. You could scale it in disadvantage per how quick you actually want this to go, right? One disadvantage if you're going quick or trying to go quick. Two disadvantage if you are really just like I don't know pulling out. Like I'm thinking like let's say characters come across a robot, right? They manage to take down the robot and they want to take the wiring out of it, right? If they just start going in and like like oh we want these wires really quick and they just start pulling out wires, that's probably going to cause damage to the materials that they'll be salvaging, right? Whereas if they kind of take their time, you know, higher likelihood they'll get better materials. Whereas if they like bring it back to a lab, right, and draw out schematics and take it apart screw by screw, likely they're going to auto succeed, right? So I think you can put maybe degrees of you could also actually put you can actually just use the degrees of difficulty maybe or but I do think because we have the disadvantage dice rules, I think I would say use those because that feels more in tune than necessarily degrees of success or just adjusting the DC. I think the DC should be what the DC is, but then put those disadvantage dice if they're depending on approach, and or vice versa, put advantage dice, depending on approach. Like if they say like, oh well, let's take the robot back to our lab, let's go find the manual of robots, right? And then let's read through it and cross section and like if they're really approaching it very clinically, you'd want them to have advantage dice, right? Because they would have the knowledge, the requisite knowledge. But again, you also want to kind of it'll depend on what kind of material. But we do have what kind of materials poor average premium. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know, man. This one, crafting is tricky. Crafting is tricky. It's it's one of those things where it's like I haven't seen a lot of games that do it really well. I'm sure they're out there, and I just don't have the experience with them. But crafting is tricky because crafting is one way that characters can become very powerful very fast without necessarily needing to level, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example that's very relevant to me right now. Final Fantasy VIII. If you've ever played Final Fantasy VIII, you probably know where I'm going with this. You can play the card game. There's a built-in card game that you just do in downtime, and you're just walking around challenging people. But you can take those cards and you can like essentially extract materials from the cards, which you can then turn into magic. So right now, my characters are level 10 with the two strongest spells in the game powering them because I just played a lot of cards, right? Um, so you can easily become overpowered if you're investing. And I could see a game where like a player, I mean, we're talking about Nigel, so I could see a game where a player like Nigel, who's a min maxer, says, well, you know what? If I just spend all my time in the starting area, just farming materials and, building strong items, I can superpower my party before we even step out of the starting town. right? Like make sure we all leave town with rocket launchers.
Right. Yeah, he would.
Triple
I mean, that's why.
triad. Yeah, that's the card game in Final Fantasy VIII. And I mean, the in one way it's fun because yeah, you're overpowered, right? But again, thinking as a GM, and I think you and I kind of agree, it's fun. The game is at its most interesting when we can kind of challenge the players, right? Um, and you don't want crafting to necessarily undo all the challenge by giving the players an ability to access power that might be beyond their current scope.
Yeah. So right now I'm going with salvaging takes time and is typically done during a quick rest. This can be done faster,
Mm-hmm.
but this gives the salvager a disadvantage dice to the salvaging roll. You can also gain an advantage dice by, and I'm going to put down uh, taking the material to a designated salvaging location, tool bench, whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh,
And that also opens up something that you can put in as like an item, like a portable tool bench.
yeah.
Make that like a really rare item. And that's also too one of those things that like a smart crafter goes, okay, the first thing I'm going to build is a fucking portable tool bench.
Right.
And and then but I think the crafting part, like based on this, when I read this, I think the crafting rules make sense. Threshold and time makes sense. It's when we get down to the individual materials, I think similar with most things, right? The materials that you have at your disposal, they're going to be your limiting factor, right? That's where you can really put the limits on it. And the other thing too is that's the kind of shit that drives a party towards an adventure, because if they want specific materials in order to craft, well, you got to go adventure to get the materials. Um, it adds a little bit of impetus to, you know, go out and do things, right? Because materials don't just appear, theoretically. If you're a very generous GM, you might, but
Yeah. I mean, it does add some opportunity for there's loot here. What is loot? It's some premium material, and that way you
yeah,
don't have to get you know
yeah, that's good too. Yeah, you say, oh, you find X amount of premium material.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's a fun little build. Yeah, you
all
could
right,
have fun
I'm
with that.
just gonna add another sentence here regarding can add a I'm gonna add a level 4 to the items.
Mhm.
Um, being extreme plus, and that level 4 items yeah will be uh
Legendary
30.
items,
Yeah.
or yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, because extreme threshold is 25, so yeah, it's got to be 30.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, or perhaps I'll just put down that level 4 items designate the threshold needed for crafting.
Sure. Yeah, it might
Since
be individual to the specific item. Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
good.
because I feel like up to then, this thing should be doable.
Yeah,
All right,
agreed.
I can write that off camera because I think that's good. I think we tightened this up where it needed to be tightened up, and
Mhm.
you know, broke down the details a lot better than I have in a lot of other times.
I have one
um,
more request.
oh, you got it.
Can we scroll down and look at the next page?
Sure.
Because yeah, who this? Who is this?
So, the person we are playing with right now, Liz, we played one other time together, and I made her
Mhm.
this character, Sorcha, an Oni marksman, and yeah. If anyone wants to get the game here and download the PDF, there are pages full a bunch of pages full of these little wanted posters where legendary adventurers end up being wanted by the government, and you get to see a little bit of their escapades and kind of how they got to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorta. Uh, courtesy
Yeah.
of me and Liz, this gun took a long time to draw, and it's still not good. It wasn't until I was too late that I realized this mechanism. Oop, that's not right. The cocking mechanism gets in the way of the scope, and that makes no sense. But once I was too late. I had finished it, and I was like, I'm not going back.
That's okay. The scope actually just, hovers above magnetically so it can slide.
Of course, of course.
There you go.
uh,
Magnets.
yeah, man.
It's
Mechanical
got,
things.
it's got
The
vents and everything though.
huh?
It's got a vent.
Yeah. I
On the
tried to
top.
make it make sense. All right.
It's got
Mechanical things are
the
hard.
stock. The stock has a brace and everything. I mean, it's pretty solid.
Thank you, thank you.
It's got a mag and everything. Yeah, yeah. Not too shabby.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. I hope this helps you understand Terra a little bit more. And we'll be back next time to go over. What are we going over next time?
You tell me. But
Oh,
I will say this as well. If you are checking this out on like YouTube or anything, right, and you have played RPGs with crafting systems that you really like, that you think we should take a look at, for inspiration or context and stuff like that, go ahead, drop that in the comments. Like, you know, I I'm very much willing to admit that my scope of RPGs is pretty narrow, right? It's a lot of D&D, a lot of Pathfinder. I don't think Fabula Ultima even has crafting. I think it's one of
uh,
those games that if you want it, just say you made it, right? Roll a thing. Oh, look at that. You did it, you didn't, right? So, which is fine too, right? If that's the game you like. But those are my three games of reference. So I would say, yeah, if you've played games where crafting is a thing, I'm personally interested in seeing them out. I think all of you probably are too. I don't know. I don't want to make
oh yeah,
assumptions for you.
if you have any comments that you're willing to share about how to make it better, or what parts you liked and which parts you think maybe need a little more touching, even if you don't know exactly how to touch it, that
Yeah.
wasn't right. Uh, let us know, and we'll dig into it some more because we want to make this something special. I know I do. I've
Yeah.
been working on it for years.
Yeah. It's coming
All right,
together. It's coming along.
thanks, man. All right, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Bye. Happy weekend.
Shh.